Carlos Sainz has struggled a lot in the 2022 season, and from the start of it, we could witness a lack of confidence and motivation in the Spaniard drive. This ultimately led to Leclerc taking the number 1 spot in the team, and although Sainz was better on multiple occasions when it comes to shot calling and overall performance, it was not enough. The Spaniard finally spoke about all the struggles he endured at Ferrari in 2022, and you wouldn't believe some of the sacrifices he made in order to stay in form. Before we dive deep into Sainz's performance in 2022, make sure to subscribe to our channel, like our video and turn on the notifications. Carlos Sainz joined Ferrari in 2021. And it wasn't a bad season for him per se. He managed to rack up some decent results, and although he lacked his first career win, Sainz did manage to finish up on the podium 4 times and did help Ferrari take over the P3 spot from McLaren in the second half of the season. Sainz finished the season ahead of his teammate Leclerc by having 164.5 points, just 4.5 points more than Norris, finishing P5 and P6 respectively. This is why Sainz entered the 2022 season with lots of promise, possibly taking the number 1 title in the team. Still, the start of the season wasn't a very good one because Sainz crashed at the 3rd race in Australia and he finished behind Leclerc in the first 2 races. Although the debut in Bahrain was extremely good, with Sainz completing the 1-2 for Ferrari and he finished P3 at the 2nd race in Jeddah, a lot of bad luck continued to follow the Spaniard. As we mentioned earlier, Sainz spun off in Australia on lap 1 and wasn't able to get his car out of the gravel trap, completing his first DNF of the season. For things to be more painful for Sainz, the second DNF came just a couple of weeks later at Imola, and after having a devastating qualifying session and finishing P10, Sainz collided with Ricciardo, completing his second DNF of the season. Although it wasn't the Spaniard's fault, the fact that Leclerc scored a huge amount of points while Sainz wasn't able to complete the race says everything we need to know about the number 1 driver in the team. When talking to motorsport.com about his struggles in the first half of the season, Sainz said it was clearly, first of all, frustrating after such a first strong year with the team where I found very few issues with the car. I felt like after the first few races in 2021, I knew where the limit of the car was. I only had to find 1 or 2 tenths in a certain type of corner and I was ready to compete. That's why the second half of the season was so strong and I could get on top of it. This year was finally a competitive car, finally a car able to battle for wins, and suddenly I find myself in a position that I've never found myself in before, which is being a bit more than 2 tenths off. I've never been more than 2 tenths off a teammate, and I was scratching my head to see where is all this lap time coming from. It was frustrating because it was the first time I had a competitive car that could allow me to fight for wins. Sainz's struggles continued in the upcoming races, and in Barcelona, from P3, a spin into the gravel trap cost him valuable places, as he had to fight his way back up the grid and finish P4. The Monaco GP was the track where Sainz defied the team orders for the first time this season, and it turned out to be the best possible choice for the Spaniard. He didn't want to go on the intermediates as he preferred to go straight to the hard compound tyre, which almost brought him the win hadn't it been for Albon slowing him down ahead while seeking a safe place to get out of the way. But the Baku GP proved to be fatal for the Maranello team, as both of the cars didn't finish the race due to hydraulic issues in Sainz's car and turbocharger failure in Leclerc's car. Still, according to Sainz, he started to find his groove around the Canadian GP when he finished P3 in the qualifying session and was pushing Verstappen for the win. Although not successful, Sainz did show that he can push for the win, and this is the track where he had to completely change his driving style in order to keep up with the competition. I kept it quite secret where my struggles came from. I think people who understand the sport, the people who do in-depth analysis, more or less know me by now and know where the issues came from. But just to make it short, I had to change completely my driving style. I had to change completely the way I was driving in a very unnatural way. I had to change to an unnatural way to make it natural, which takes a long time. I also had to try things with setup. Most of them were in the wrong direction, and then coming back to find a good direction, and this takes races. There is no testing anymore, so you need to test in race weekends. That means sometimes you have to commit to a race weekend with a setup where you basically got it wrong for that weekend, and it meant another weekend not performing. That accumulated frustration until I think it was more or less Canada that I found a bit my way. And since then, I've started performing a little better. Indeed, Sainz's performance was truly something he and the team were proud of. In Canada, Silverstone and France, Sainz scored many more points than his teammate Leclerc, who wasn't able to finish the race in France and did suffer from his own team's tactics in Silverstone. Sainz's defense was through the roof as he denied the team tactics yet again after a pit stop was completed under the safety car. His teammate was left out, and Binotto asked the Spaniard to hold back Perez and Hamilton in order for Leclerc to make a difference ahead of him. This was briefly denied by Sainz, who said that he is the faster car on the track, and if Perez and Hamilton do get past him, Leclerc would be a sitting duck compared to them. This is why Sainz took action and grabbed his first win of his career at Silverstone. Not just that, he grabbed his first pole position of his career at this weekend's event. Bad luck struck him yet again in Austria as he was getting ready to overtake Verstappen when his engine burst up in flames and he was left outside of the race. Although Sainz's pace has improved a lot from Canada onwards, he is still not 100% happy behind the wheel of the F175. There are little things that suddenly raise your confidence, and that's where I started to feel like I can also be quick with this car. At the beginning of the year, you always have your doubts. Is this car ever going to give me that confidence I had with last year's car? Am I ever going to find the right driving to drive this car to the level that I know I can? You have these doubts. But then these little details help you to trust the process and trust all that hard work that I had to do. Although there were many times that I had got it wrong with the setup direction, with my driving, it's still not a car that I like. Honestly, in how to drive it, I still have to think a lot while driving. And I'm not driving fully naturally yet, but at least I know that if I put everything together, I can be there. What's even more important is that Sainz told his team where the struggles were, but due to the budget cap restrictions, they weren't quite able to fulfill his wishes, and he had to learn how to drive the car he was provided. The team obviously listened to me and knew where my struggles were. But in a budget cap era, and with such a simple car regulation like we have nowadays, they are very simple cars. You have very little freedom to play with setup. It wasn't until very late in the year where we've brought a couple of things that have helped me to really find a bit more from the car. Everything since Barcelona, which was my lowest point in terms of qualifying speed and race speed, was me pretty much changing the whole driving and trying to find a car that more or less gave me a bit of confidence. With that being said, what do you think about Sainz's struggles in 2022? Do you believe he has a chance to be Ferrari's #1 driver in 2023 and beyond? Let us know in the comments below.